I'm Julia Park from The Ohio State University. Today I'm going to present my co-authored paper which measures the representation at the argument level using argument extraction method. So in representative democracies, it is crucial to reflect what public thinks about policy in policymaking. And political scientists have studied representation from various perspectives using various research designs. And one of the most widely used empirical approach to study representation is to look at the alignment between the public's policy preferences that are revealed through surveys and the legislators' policy stances that are inferred from their roll call voting records or elite surveys. However, there was no research at scale that looks at how well the public's substantive policy ideas, arguments, or reasonings are represented in lawmaking process, especially legislative deliberations. So in this project, we are the first to analyze whether the public discourse is echoed in legislative deliberation. And in order to study that, we look at the public discourse on various policy issues that are collected from Reddit online forum and compare that to the arguments that are made by members of Congress during the congressional hearing process. So political scientists and social scientists overall are increasingly using text analysis to study political discourse. And often topic models were used so far, but then it's not granular enough, it's rather coarse. So there is a strong need in the discipline to look at more granular level of analysis. And document level embeddings are also popularly used these days. But then typically documents tend to have many filler statements that are not core to the main idea of the document. So which includes noise. And so there is a strong need to filter those the non-necessary statements and focus only on the core or main ideas or arguments. And cosine similarities using the document level embeddings is also used to measure the similarity of two different texts. But then it is focusing on more likely on the similar use of similar words or phrases, and it often fails to detect the negation words, so that it tends to match the arguments that are using on the similar topic, using similar arguments, but taking opposite stances. So that's a critical loophole of just relying on cosine similarity using the document level embeddings. So we develop a argument mining process or pipeline, and arguments are fundamental building blocks of effective discourse. We make arguments on an everyday basis to communicate with any other people, and arguments are made during public policy deliberation or legislative deliberation because arguments are a necessary component to form or alter one's opinion. So often arguments are part of decision-making process. However, argument detection has received relatively less attention in so far because of the conceptual complexity and how we define arguments and technical difficulty to detect them. So this is our previous publication. And here we first proposed the argument mining pipeline called WIBA, which is an acronym of what is being argued. And building upon this WIBA framework we previously presented, in this paper we present the second version of WIBA, which is much more improved. So first of all, let me explain what WIBA does. So we use fine-tuned large language models and use prompt engineering to detect argumentative parts in a long text. And then we extract the topic that is being argued. And then we determine the stance of the argument toward that topic. So WIBA detects 3 components all at once. And this was done in the first version of WIBA. And the first version of the WIBA used multiple large language models and combined them. But in the second version of WIBA, we present in this paper, uses Claude, which is the most the best performing commercially available large language models. And now in the second version of WIBA, we also detect the types of arguments, whether it's inductive, deductive, whether it's reason-based or emotional, and so on. So I'll explain more details in the later slides. So we believe that the WIBA presents the most comprehensive argument detection and analysis framework to date. There were previous attempts to study to extract arguments from text, but previous works mostly focused on individual contents of arguments. So focusing on extracting claims only or the stances only. But WIBA completes 3 tasks of detecting argument, topic, and stance all at once. And there was there were some literature that developed a comprehensive tools such as ours, but their works are not generic enough to be applied to various argumentation environments, such as informal arguments or formal arguments in various contexts. But WIBA can handle various types, the various styles of the arguments or rhetoric. So in this paper, we apply the newer version of WIBA to study representation by assessing the overlap between the arguments that are presented in the public discourse online forum and the arguments laid out by members of Congress during the legislative deliberation process. And then we will study which policy areas tend to be better represented in legislative deliberation, and which legislators tend to better represent public ideas or arguments. To study this, we collected 2 types of data. The one is the public deliberation, the texts. And Reddit, we chose Reddit because Reddit is the largest online deliberation forum, and anyone can join Reddit to discuss policy issues. And the second is the legislative deliberation data, and we chose the U.S. Congressional committee hearing transcripts because committees are at the heart of the legislative making process. So all the core arguments and ideas and substantive details of the legislation will be discussed in the committee hearings. So we assume that linking these 2 data will be ideal to study argument representation. For this study, we look at 4 policy issue areas. 2 of them are more partisan, clearly partisan and polarizing in U.S. politics, that are abortion and gun control. In contrast, we look at the other 2 that are historically less partisan and polarizing, and rather technical or scientific oriented. We chose nuclear energy and cryptocurrency as this type of policy issues. Cryptocurrency has become a little more partisan in recent days because of the Trump's strong support for the cryptocurrency, but the period that we look at that point, cryptocurrency was more in the burgeoning period, burgeoning stage of the discussion without any clear partisan leaning. So we thought that this is also quite interesting to look at. To select the Reddit posts and hearings that are relevant to these specific 4 issues, we went through a very deliberate process in selecting the data. So first, we started with seed keywords such as abortion for abortion and gun control for gun control. And then we use keyword expansions tools such as word topic-based or rake-based keyword expansion tools. And then at the later stage, we use lemma to select only the data that are actually on this topic. So we went through the additional screening process using lemma. So for the hearing, we use committee hearing transcripts, including both the House of the Representatives and the Senate committees. And the hearings transcript data includes conversation between members of Congress and the witnesses who are experts or someone who can testify on a policy issue being discussed. For the Reddit data, in Reddit, there are the specific community is called subreddits. So in subreddits, users can form any deliberation communities with particular theme. It can be on a policy, it can be on some technical issues. So for the abortion, we selected around 7 subreddits. And then gun control, we also manually selected subreddits that are deemed relevant to the topic. And because anyone can join Reddit discussion, we can think of the Reddit posts are arguments made by general public, but then since the users self-selected into this specific subreddit and started discussion, we can think of that our study is looking at the representation of the public that are specifically attentive to a given policy issue. So this table shows how many hearings and how many subreddits that we included in the analysis and the number of statements from the hearing and a number of relevant posts. In Reddit, there are many noisy, irrelevant posts, so that we went through one more screening process to include only the posts that are relevant to the topic. Now I introduced how WIBA version 2 works. So we first define argument as a claim supported by at least one premise. And to detect argumentative part in a long text, we use Claude Sonnet 4.5 using prompt engineer to go through an algorithmic search for claims and premises. So each document, such as each speech that a speaker made in a hearing or each Reddit post, may contain 0 or 1 or multiple arguments. After extracting argumentative parts, for each argument, the large language model gives us the confidence level that the text will contain an argument, and we select the argumentative parts that has confidence level over 0.7. And after extracting the arguments, we detect topic that is implicitly or explicitly central to the claim. And we actually detect broad topic and more fine-grained topic, but in this study, we only use broad topic, which include abortion, gun control, nuclear energy, and cryptocurrency. So we use it to screen out only the relevant texts. And then after extracting arguments on one of these 4 issues, we detect a stance, which captures whether the argument is in favor of abortion, for example, or against the topic abortion. Here we show the percentage of arguments that are on topic across the platforms and across policy issues. Congress, we were able to find more relevant arguments than Reddit's. And here we show you the distribution of stances toward each topic. And on abortion, Congress is almost equally divided. And in Reddit, on abortion, there are more arguments in favor of abortion. In contrast, in gun control, Congress is more in favor of the stronger gun control law. But in Reddit, we see more arguments against a stronger gun control law. So it's not necessarily that Reddit users are all liberal, but it depends on the policy issue area. After extracting the arguments and topic and stance, before comparing arguments across two platforms, we first normalize the arguments so that we take the arguments to take this specific format, so claim plus because plus premises. So the arguments will take this format. This is to facilitate the comparison in a more clear and clean and rigorous way. And then we construct document embeddings of these normalized arguments, and then compute the cosine similarity for every possible pair of Reddit argument and Congressional argument. And then argument pairs with cosine similarity equal to or greater than 0.7 are selected as potential matches. And then we go through a final two-step screening process, which has prompts checking whether the arguments are making same claim and whether the arguments take same stance. So we screen out all the mismatches. Now, using the we consider that the Reddit arguments that are matched to the Congressional arguments are considered represented. Here I show you the percentage of matched arguments among all Congressional arguments. So we see more public arguments are spoken out during Congressional committee hearings on abortion and gun control compared to nuclear energy and cryptocurrency. So more polarizing and partisan issues tend to have more stronger higher overlap between Congress and the Reddit. And then we quantify the representation score for each legislator. And here we find that the Democrats tend to represent better the arguments in favor of abortion, and Republicans tend to better represent arguments against abortion, which is intuitive. And also we find the similar conventional partisan pattern on gun control law. And we also see that female legislators tend to make more pro-abortion arguments, reflecting public sentiment. Whereas the members grandstanding mostly in committee hearings are less likely to make representative arguments. On nuclear energy, we didn't expect to see any partisan patterns, but surprisingly, we found partisan patterns so that Democrats tend to make arguments against against nuclear energy, whereas Republicans are making more pro-nuclear energy arguments. And on cryptocurrency, it's new emerging policy issues, so we don't see any partisan gender or ideological patterns. So in conclusion, we developed a new measure of representation using our argument extraction tool by comparing arguments across public deliberation and legislative deliberation, and present a descriptive analysis of to what extent the arguments are overlap across policy issues and depending on legislators' types. And this study opens up new possibilities to study representation at a more granular argumentative level, offering more nuanced understanding, which might have not been revealed without this argument-centric analysis. And the method is generalizable to compare arguments across any context to study representation such as interscript versus bill text or interscript versus congressional deliberation. And it can be also generalizable to study any flow of ideas more broadly. Thank you.
Thank you, Julia. We have time for one or two questions.
Very nice talk. In one of the slides, you compared your evaluation with Reddit, was like 70% around. Do you think there's any way to improve to higher comparison ratio?
So the percentage of Reddit arguments being discussed in Congress? Yeah, maybe members of Congress can pay more attention to what people say.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you. So the Reddit is like not only American. Yes, it's not representative by like American. One question is about that. So is the representativeness of the like international like community on the Reddit, and like from the like political science, we know that Congress is not that much responsive. Like Aiken and Bartel's Democracy for Realists, they show that it's responsive to elite. So these numbers is too much, I think, for the U.S. Congress. Like if we compare with the survey, which is representative of American. Yeah, Ivan.
Yeah, so our assumption is that the Reddit posts on U.S. policy might be made by the people living in the U.S. or U.S. citizens elsewhere. So that's an assumption that we make. Thank you.
All right, Julia, I had a quick question. So it seems like it's really impressive kind of pipeline that you've put together for measuring this. And when you see like a downstream regression, one question is all of the little error and like variance that could come through that pipeline, is that somehow propagated into the regression standard errors, or is there some way to do that? Because you have like some measurement error and heterogeneity in this large pipeline. And so by default, the regression might treat those measurements as exact, though there's error around like how much is this argument, represented, things like. I know there's been recent developments in like ways to propagate error from LLM-based measurement into downstream analyses, and I wonder if y'all have considered that or implemented any of those.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with other the tools or models that can fix or assess measurement errors, but we can discuss further. Thank you.